Hello, welcome back to my channel. I'm Joshua Helms. Today we're going to talk about using two different EQ pedals, using one at the front of the board and one at the end of the board, why I would do such a thing, and how I set my pedals up. So let's get into it. Alright, so first let me show you how I've got my pedals set. This is the first one coming into my board. I've got it set for basically a mid boost, using these two boosted, bumping down the highs just a little bit, and even bumping down the lower tones. So just using this really just as a mid boost, but you could set this up all kinds of different ways. So this is how I'm using it in front of the board. Now we're going to look at the one coming at the end of the board. So I've got it going just the opposite. So I've got the highs bumped quite a bit and a little bit of a reverse curve. So now I'm kind of pulling out some of the mids. And I've actually bumped up the bass notes a little bit just because I like the way it sounded. Okay, so this one is more of a tone shaper, as the other one was strictly for a mid boost. And just to show you real quickly, running through my amp, I have my my tone set pretty even. So you will have to make some adjustments on your amp when you're using your EQs on your pedal board. So keeping them pretty even will help so that you don't get too much of your treble or too much of your bass. That way your tones are being controlled by your pedals. Okay, so let's get into what they sound like with the guitar. To my far left here, this is the EQ that I've got set where I'm pushing more highs. Not really cutting a whole lot of mids, but I am cutting some, and my I've actually got some of my lower tones kicked up a little bit. I don't know if you can see in the camera or not. And by the way, you're actually looking at it sideways, so I had to lay it this way to make it fit. It actually turns the other way, so your highs should be at the top, if that's confusing to look at. Okay, so without any effects at all, here's my amp tone. Now, I personally am pretty happy with the tone already coming out of the amp, which is one thing I highly recommend if you're struggling with getting any sound out of your pedals that you like. Start with your amp and get your amp to the point that you could play just on the amp alone and be happy with it. Then everything that you do on top of that should only enhance it. So let's kick on this EQ. Makes the highs kind of sparkle. I would almost compare it maybe to a Vox amp, maybe a Fender. Be careful with the highs though, they can really do some serious damage to your ears. So it's working with this amp. It doesn't work with all amps. I have plugged this into my Marshall. Sounds great on the neck pickup, which is what I'm using right now. When you go to the bridge pickup, hear the difference here. It can be pretty harsh, so do be careful with the highs. Okay, it's pretty cool, but I tend to prefer that at the neck pickup. It's a good tone that you can really use for really anything. You can use it for lead as well. You might get lost in the mix a little bit with the highs, since I'm not really pushing the mids that hard, which I personally prefer this tone as opposed to a real mid-heavy sound, and that's just my personal opinion. But it's pretty good for like kind of funky kind of stuff. pickup's like. Yeah. Got a pretty cool chime going on there. So let's move on to our mid-heavy EQ. Not real heavy, it's kind of a subtle change. So here's without any pedals. Let's go to my neck pickup. Let's kick on the mid boost. You hear a little bit of a volume change there, but mostly just kind of thickens up those mid frequencies. Where I personally use this is only when I'm going to play lead and I need to get over the band mix. I don't typically like the tone of the mids being that heavy. For country, it does pretty good. Yeah, my roots are old country. Okay for that, especially when you play lead. And I'm going to go on to the neck pickup. Yeah, definitely good when you need to be heard. It can be a little bit harsh on the ear as well. So for me, typically, I'm just using that strictly as a mid boost. When I need it to solo over, you know, maybe I'm just getting a little bit lost in the mix a little bit, so I'll kick that on. Normally, I'm going to play totally without the mids. I feel like it's a little bit warmer tone. Oh, let's put a little bit of overdrive in it. So here's my blues overdrive. Alright, let's put the mids in now. It definitely makes it more of a rock sound. Let's go with the dumbler here. Without mids. Alright, let's put some distortion in it. Without the mid boost. Mid boost it. It puts that aggression back in it, which is a great tone for rock. When you want to be heard, I guess how I should put it is the mids are when you want to be heard. When I'm trying to mix in the band, I tend to not want to be heard as much. I know that's a weird thing for a guitar player to say, but guitar players think that everybody should hear us. There are the times that I'm trying not to be heard as much. I just want to blend, and that's when I kick the mids out. So that's just my personal approach as to how I'm using these. Okay, so now let's use the overdrive again. Let's go back to our I don't even know what I call that. Alright, let's kick on some overdrive. pretty cool tone. And you say, well, that's really cool, except I am kind of losing my mids there. That's fine. Leave that on. If you like that sound, leave that on. Go over here to your mid boost and use it together. Right, so I'm getting those highs from the first EQ pedal, and I'm getting the mids from the others, and just kind of mix them together. It gets a pretty cool sound. So a lot of times I'm using just this one at the end. That's kind of my tone shaper. That's maybe a sound I'm going to keep steady throughout the whole song. And then this one comes on off and on. Maybe I'm starting out here playing rhythm. And I want to go into lead, and I need to get over the band. So I do this. Right, so that's just an example of how you could use it. Me personally, I use the mid boost as just kind of a lead thing, but you can use it all throughout. If it's a tone that you're looking for, you can use it through the whole song. It all just depends really how you're trying to blend into the band. That's always very important, being able to blend. But the cool thing that this EQ pedal, I'm trying to think of a word for it, since it's not a mid boost, I guess a high boost, treble boost maybe. It does bring some clarity to the notes. Put some separation in there, even when you go to a much higher gain. Here's without that again. Okay, let's try this one. Alright, one other thing I want to point out is when you are boosting the high frequencies, sounds great on the neck pickup. Okay, go to the bridge pickup, it can get very harsh, especially depending on what kind of amp you're going through. I'm going through my Boss Katana right now. I did plug it into my Marshall. Marshalls tend to be a little bit heavier on the high mids, it seems like. I'd say high mids as well as the high frequencies, depending on how you've got your amp EQ'd. And it can be absolutely brutal on the ears. So I would recommend, you may have to do some adjustments there based on the amp you're playing through. So, you know, here's my distortion with my neck pickup on the lead note. There's the other distortion. Overdrive. I much prefer it with the bridge pickup. Okay, so there's just a little bit of a demonstration as to how I would use my EQs. There's so many options. You can do a whole lot of different things with an EQ. I've literally seen where people will use an EQ strictly just to get a brand new amp tone or make their guitar sound like a different guitar. A whole lot of effects you can do. This is kind of a practical setup that's working for me, so maybe it'll give you some ideas and something that you can try out for yourself. So until next time, we'll see you.